Just based on results, America's last season was without a doubt the strongest region. For each international Tier 1 tournament, there was at least one America's team in the grand finals. There was also 2 in the top 4 of Tokyo and 2 in the top 4 of champs. With the roster moves being made in the offseason, it looked like the Americas regions may have gotten even more competitive. But is the way that some of these teams went about it the most ideal? The idea of buying individual players to form a super team seems like a no-brainer. But some of the trophy lifters last season didn't need to do this. One of which was Evil Genius. They were mocked to no end about their 10-man teams, which looking back at it, may have been one of the major reasons why they were able to get better so quickly. Of course, Demon One helped, but players like Jagamo and Calm weren't seen as top-tier Raze and Sulfur players when they first joined EG in 2022. Same for Boostio. So how did they make such a massive jump in the 2023 VCT season? Well, reps. Or as Potter and Boostio explains,
having the reserve roster has been really beneficial for us this year. We made the team get rushed on like 100 times. The same site, the same strat, and the players go crazy. How boring is that? But for me, I needed them to be able to react the same way and see the patterns, see the vision. And so being able to do that, being really redundant in those kinds of things has been awesome, and you're not going to find a scrim partner that's going to be willing to do those things.
Absolutely not.
So yeah, having the reserve roster has been awesome in that regard.
We're winning, so who cares how boring it is during like the hard parts?
Right.
It's fun winning, but definitely there's been some times where it's just like I'm playing C and then the reserve team will just hit on my side like 15 times in a row and you just do it over and over again.
the players on the team took the idea of hard work pays off. The only thing better than practice is perfect practice. And with 100 reps with the second team that were willing to mimic their competition, best believe they got an advantage that other teams weren't willing to pay for. Especially for champs, where quality scrims just didn't really exist that much.
I was just wondering, how hard was it to find quality teams for practice leading up to this event?
We scrimmed the Oxygen, who is still playing, and some pug teams, but yeah, the quality is pretty bad. I mean, there's nothing really could be done since most team seasons are finished anyways. So, I mean, we just made do with what we could, and we just did more theory than actually playing up until the teams came to champions.
Everyone was screaming the quality being pretty bad, yeah.
Yeah, bad quality.
I'm not saying that teams and players didn't work hard, but sometimes you have to put in even more effort. Kind of reminds me of this Kobe quote when he talks about Mamba mentality.
The confidence comes from preparation. So when the game's on the line, I'm not asking myself to do something that I haven't done thousands of times before. When I prepare, I know what I'm capable of doing, I know what I'm comfortable doing, and I know what I'm not comfortable doing. Right? And so in those moments, if it looks like I'm ice cold or not nervous, it's because I've done it thousands of times before. And so what's one more time? Look how much more training I have done by simply starting at 4. Right? And so now you do that, and as the years go on, the separation that you have with your competitors and your peers just grows larger and larger and larger and larger and larger. And by year 5 or 6, doesn't matter what kind of work they do in the summer, they're never going to catch up.
I even remember Boaster alluding to the fact that Fnatic kind of let off the gas a bit around champs. I took this as Fnatic most likely in the beginning of the season practicing borderline unhealthy amounts of hours, or putting in a lot of time into their rank grind as well. Even Mini had to step down as head coach because the amount of time they were putting in didn't make having a work-life balance ideal for him. I'm saying all of this to point out there may be other ways to make a dominant team besides just buying the best players. 10-man teams are expensive though. Maybe all you really need is 1 or 2 players that are just cracked out of their minds, and the rest of a possible 10-man team could just be filled with hungry players who are willing to grind and prove themselves. I'm sure some players might not like this idea, but maybe ideally, you just need to pay top dollar for a couple of players and the rest of the team's salary gets a modest paycheck, if money is the real limiting factor for a 10-man team. Of course, this is still risky as well. Balancing all those egos isn't an easy task. Evil Genius benefited from having an amazing coach that set the record straight.
One of the biggest conversations I had with each of the players, whether they were on the main team or the reserve roster, was letting them know that, hey, traditionally in FPS, you're the 6th, 7th, 8th man. The chance of you even playing on the main roster is slim to none. It was important for me to let the main roster know that that's not the plan moving into this year. It wasn't my plan to constantly move players around and constantly look for the best options for which 5 it was going to be.
Plus, Riot has done a great job at listening to players' complaints and changed the rules and schedules for teams to get better quality scrims and partnerships. I still wouldn't mind seeing other teams try to make a 10-man work because there's a lot of positives that can come with it. Without EG forming one, Demon 1 may have still been grinding in T2 for the 2023 season. Shoot, we may have had the opportunity to see other cracked tier 2 players like Verno on the T1 stage earlier. I'm just throwing this out there in the universe for teams that are known to be bag droppers to consider this in the future if things don't go right this season. The other idea is giving players more control in forming teams. Yes, trialing is a common practice that you see happen, but we've also seen organizations this offseason make decisions that go against the wishes of the players. I think FNS has a great point on this topic.
There's a lot of issues that, or maybe some people have bad attitudes that I don't know about. So I like to be familiar with the people I'm playing with before I play with them. More times than not in my entire career in esports, anytime I've just been slotted onto a lineup, I've had less success than when I've just made a team of my own, because I don't know what pre-existing problems other people have already, right?
Shoot, look at Loud. They started off very similar to how the likes of Wardell, Sub Rosa, and FNS did in CSGO. Just a bunch of crack players doing tournaments together and eventually getting picked up by an organization. Sidak, Aspas, Picada, Sassy, and Les came together to form Picada e Amigos. And they tore up the Brazilian circuit, so much so that Loud bought them. And get this, they kept the team together. Well, initially anyways. Still, this seems like a concept that's kind of foreign for certain teams nowadays. However, giving players more power in forming their team seems like a no-brainer. It can really help with team synergy and avoid potential conflicts of interest and awkward situations that may hurt a team in the long run. But let's talk about how some of the teams went about the offseason. Like NRG, who are seen as the team to beat by creating their own super team. With Demon 1 and Ethan replacing the likes of Artis and FNS, you have to say it's an upgrade, right? I also find it interesting with the discourse around Marv and Psalm. A lot of people like to bring up Marv when he was on Optic and say it's an upgrade. But if you compare some of the stats that Marv had when he was on Sentinels versus some of Psalm's stats when he was on NRG, I'm not too sure you can say it's an absolute upgrade. I guess some of Psalm's stats are just a benefit when you let a former duelist main on a controller. Plus, I wonder if Marv would even be on this team if Psalm didn't decide to take a small break from competitive play. Then there's some people pointing out how poorly this team is performing in scrims, which I don't put too much worry into. Some teams use scrims just to test ideas rather than to win them. Honestly, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing this on purpose to have people doubt them. Just more fuel to prove the haters wrong, I guess. If pro teams didn't want people to know about their scrim results anyways, then they could just make alt accounts. Overall, in my opinion, the ceiling for this team is lifting a trophy or two. And the floor, aka the bare minimum, should be placing at least top 4 in a couple of international tournaments. Anything less would be a bust in my opinion, unless they lose to tournament winners. I mainly say this because this team is too talented to not dominate. Next, we have Sentinels, who decided to pick up one of Tier 2's best IGLs and John QT, as well as Zelsis, who was supposed to be on the team's bench. I think most people knew a talent like him wouldn't be warming seats for too long. However, I thought they brought in Zelsis just in case 10 started to underperform again or got sick. But it turns out he's replacing Picada. And honestly, you can't blame them. They've been on fire in these offseason tournaments and in scrims. This isn't saying that Picada is bad, but rather Zelsis just fits the team better. However, we've seen that offseason performance doesn't always translate the following year. We've heard stories of them being dominant in scrims last year too, just to see them fail to make it to both Tokyo and Champs. Maybe it's copium, but I actually feel different about this team. However, to go from failing to make it to one global land to lifting trophies in 1 year seems like a huge step to take in my opinion. And honestly, I just want Sentinels to qualify for some international events at this point, and they should. Next, we have Leviathan, who told the world that they mean business too, by trying to form their own super team. Getting Aspas was a major, especially since last year it felt like King really needed some help. Not only was King IGLing, but he was also top fragging during LCQ last year too. They haven't lost a single map in the off-season tournaments yet, which makes dropping Azir for Calm an interesting choice. Well, let me not say drop since he's still on the team as a sub for now, but it is odd since he wasn't doing bad at all during those off-season matches. With Calm on this team, they now have people from Chile, Brazil, Germany, Argentina, and America. Truly an international super team. I really hope language isn't going to be a problem though. I can only imagine that English is going to be mainly used for this team's communication. But with the recent Sky nerfs, picking up Calm may have been a good call since Nazir's go-to agent during the Superdome was Sky. At the moment though, it seems that some of the players weren't happy with Nazir being benched, but we'll see if Leviathan's gamble pays off. I expect Leviathan to make at least one international event this year too. Next is Loud, where we only have Sadak and Les from the Champions 2022 squad winners. With Aspas leaving in the offseason, many people are doubting Loud, which kind of reminds me of how people were sleeping on them after Tokyo. But you just can't sleep on the professionalism and pedigree that Loud has been able to create. So much so that I was one of the few people that had them beating Fnatic in champs. I didn't know they were going to beat them twice, but hey, if you want to doubt them, then be my choice. I won't. But since the Americas region is so freaking competitive now, realistically, they should qualify for at least one international tournament, which will still be hard. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if they make it top 4 at a global LAN event too. Lastly, we have to talk about Evil Genius and their potential 2023 season. They currently only have Potter and Jogamo from a team that were able to lift the Champions Trophy in 2023. There are rumors that Derek, Afpoth, and Nature are joining them soon, as well as rumblings that FlyQuest might come and take EG's spot in franchising, which would be kind of wild because this would be the second time something like this has happened in the Americas. Makes you think if teams in this region will start to realize that if you want to be profitable, then salary cuts may be needed, or at least a different way to monetize your brand and fan base. It's also crazy to me how Jogamo didn't get poached by a team. You can make a strong argument that he was the world's second best race player behind Jing last year. If anyone deserved to be giving offers, surely it should have been him. I honestly don't have that much faith for this team, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if Potter was able to prove me and the world wrong again by coaching a team that no one believes in to heights that no one saw coming. It will be also interesting to see how they do in real matches, since apparently they've been kicking butt in scrims. Overall, it seems the top teams in America's last season are a shell of their former glory. But the newly created super teams are hoping to show the world that this region hasn't missed a step. Which team in the Americas do you think will carry in 2024? Let me know down below. I like to reply to every single comment within 48 hours of a video being posted.